Are you having network problems, or would you just like to know how to set up a network connection properly in Windows? If so, that's what we're doing today. Stay tuned. So today, we're talking about Windows networking. This video is more going to be about the network connection itself and not necessarily your internet speed. However, many of the tips that I'm going to show can affect your internet speed. So don't just switch off the video yet, because taking advantage of the full speed of your internet starts with having a properly configured network connection. But then again, it should be obvious though, right? I mean, you can't expect to have a properly functioning internet connection without a properly functioning network connection, right? Actually, you can, because believe it or not, your internet uses a lot less bandwidth than your computer is capable of. So even an improperly configured network can still give you a fast internet connection. But I'll explain that more in a minute. First, I gotta pay some bills. So check out today's sponsor. Is your copy of Windows 10 unactivated? Well, it doesn't have to be, because with today's sponsor, VIP SCD Key, you can get a valid Windows 10 license for under $20. Stop dealing with that stupid watermark on the desktop, the valid license for Windows 10. Also, with an activated copy of Windows 10, you can upgrade to Windows 11 for free. Just go to the link in the description below and pick up a valid Windows 10 license key. During checkout, use the code CYBERCPU for a 25% discount. Once you have your key, go to your activation settings in Windows 10 and click on the link that says Change Product Key. Enter the product key you just purchased and hit Activate. Now you don't have to deal with that stupid watermark that come with running an unactivated copy of Windows 10. Now, on with the video. So, here's the thing. If you have a 100 megabit internet connection, that doesn't mean that web pages are going to load at 100 megabit, because believe it or not, most web servers are throttled. So on any one particular web page, you're going to see a fraction of your internet speed, at least the internet speed that you pay for. Also, a 100 megabit internet connection is possible on a 10100 network card. Considering most computers today come with a gigabit Ethernet adapter, you could be leaving performance on the table that you would never knew you had. In fact, in some cases, you may be leaving performance on the table that you didn't really even know you needed. That's the reason why most people can get along with just fine on a wireless internet connection, even though it's considerably slower than a hardwired connection. However, as soon as you start transferring files across your network or downloading large files off the internet, that's where the speed of your network connection really makes a difference. Now, obviously, this video isn't going to cover the most blatantly obvious things that can affect your network connection. For instance, I'm going to assume that you've already reset your router and any switches or other network devices between your router and your computer. Also, if you want the fastest network connection possible, you shouldn't be using a wireless connection at all. Now, I'm not saying there's anything bad about wireless networks. They're super convenient, and in some cases, they work perfectly fine. But their convenience does not come from their performance. A wireless connection is always going to be slower than plugging into an Ethernet cable. However, even if you have no other choice but to use a wireless network, the tips I'm showing you in this video should help you. But keep in mind that your wireless network is never going to match the speed of an Ethernet connection. So let's jump on the computer and I'll show you the proper way to set up a network connection. Okay, we're going to be doing all this from Windows 11, but I'm going to be using the control panel, so you should be able to use exactly the same tips I'm giving you here in Windows 10 as well. So, like I said, the first thing we're going to need to do is open the control panel. So to do that, click on your Start button and just type in CON and click on Control Panel, and that should open your control panel up. Then from there, you want to go into Network and Internet, and then the Network and Sharing Center right here. Now, the Network and Sharing Center is kind of hidden in Windows 11, but you can always get to it through the control panel if you want to. So from this point right here, we want to go into adapter settings. And then from adapter settings, we want to look at our Ethernet connection right here. Now by double clicking on it, as you can see, the speed right now is 1 gigabit. However, I'm going to change this real quick just to give you an example of what could go wrong. So if we go into properties right here, I'm going to click on the hardware and push configure right here. And then from here, I'm going to go over to the advanced tab. I'm going to scroll all the way down until I see speed and duplex. And I'm going to set this to 10 megabit. We're going to hit OK. And then at that point, it's going to disconnect my network and then reconnect it again. And then once it reconnects, as you can see, now we're running at 10 megabit. Now, the reason I did this is so we can do a speed test real quick, and I can show you what we can get. So it's going to take a second for the speed test to start right here. Obviously, we're running at 10 megabit, but as you can see, we're sitting right around 10 megabit in our speed test, because obviously if our Ethernet connection is set to 10 megabit, our internet can never be faster than what our Ethernet is set at. So unfortunately, we're limited to that. And that's going to be going up and down. So as you can see, the upload speed is also stuck right around 10 megabit. It's a little bit less, but it's close. And there we go. So we got right under 10 up and down. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back. We're going to click on properties, go to configure. And then from this window right here, we're going to go to advanced. We're going to go back down to speed and duplex, and we're going to set this to auto again, and then go ahead and hit OK. And then like before, it has to disconnect and then reconnect again. And then from here, as you can see, now we're sitting at 1 gigabit again. And I'm going to go ahead and open the speed test back up and hit go again, just so I can show you the difference right here. So now that I'm running at 1 gigabit, I should be able to run to up to 1 gigabit of speed. Unfortunately though, my internet isn't that fast. However, as you can see, we are getting considerably more speed than we did when we had it set to 10 megabit. So if my Ethernet connection was stuck at 10 megabit all the time, I'd be leaving a lot of performance on the table. Now, if you have your connection set up to automatic negotiation and it still detects 100 megabit or 10 megabit and not gigabit, then there's a number of different things that could be going wrong. For instance, I had this exact same problem when I first remodeled this room right here as a film set. The system right here would only connect at 100 megabit. It turned out though that my problem was just a bad network cable. When swapping that network cable out, the connection went to 1 gigabit with no problem. Another issue you could be having is simply the driver for your Ethernet card. This one isn't common, but sometimes a buggy driver can cause connection issues. So it doesn't hurt to try to see if there's an updated driver for your Ethernet card. I've also had situations in the past where I was unknowingly connecting to a 10100 switch instead of a gigabit switch, because with auto negotiation, the connection is going to connect as fast as it's possible to connect. And if you're connected to a 10100 switch, then 100 megabit is the fastest possible. Also, keep in mind, modern routers sometimes still come with 10100 switches built into them. For instance, I always keep a fairly low cost router in the trunk of my car, because if a customer's router goes out, it's nice to have one on hand that I can sell them without having to order it and go back at a later time to install it. However, most customers don't need $200 routers, so I will keep a good but cheaper router in the back of my car. Unfortunately though, this came to bite me once. I had a customer with a fairly good sized network whose router had failed. Now, by good size, I don't mean a couple thousand computers. I mean they probably had like 10 to 15. However, at the time we had to get something working, so I installed the router from my trunk and everything worked great. That was, of course, until I got the call a couple days later that all of their file shares were hecka slow. It turns out that the router that I've been stocking all this time only had a 10100 switch built into it. So all their traffic on their network was limited to 100 megabit. Now, I make sure to keep a gigabit router in my trunk now, but unfortunately, they cost a little bit more. Now, the next network setting that I recommend you change is your DNS servers. DNS servers are extremely important part of your ability to take advantage of the internet. If it wasn't for DNS, we would have no domain names. Essentially, if you wanted to go to Google, you would have to know Google's IP address. And if you wanted Google to be as fast as possible, you'd need to know the IP address for the Google data center that was closest to your geologic location. I couldn't even imagine the difficulty of trying to put IP addresses on business cards. But thank God for DNS, right? Luckily though, DNS is part of every internet service, and it's something that just works. However, there's lots of reasons to change your DNS servers, but the primary one and most important one is that almost any DNS server is going to be better than your ISPs. And you know what? This is for a couple of reasons. For one, not everyone knows to change their DNS servers. So you'll be guaranteed that almost every customer that does business with your ISP is using their DNS servers, and they're getting absolutely beaten to death on a daily basis. Second of all, your ISP might use its DNS to control internet usage. By that, I mean that they might filter out DNS requests for certain websites that they don't want you to go to, like torrent sites or websites or other websites that they deem like bad behavior. For instance, if you watched my video recently on how to install Office Starter 2010, one of the issues was in that video that I forgot to mention in the video was that if you're using Comcast, for some reason, they block Microsoft's download servers for that specific program. So to get around that, you have to change your DNS servers to something other than Comcast. So changing your DNS servers will actually give you a faster experience on the internet. Now, it won't necessarily speed up your download speeds, but it does speed up the time it takes to retrieve the DNS for whatever website you want to go to. Believe it or not, in some cases, it makes a dramatic difference. There's lots of different DNS providers to choose from. Some of the most popular ones are Google or Cloudflare. Personally, I've been using Google for years, but recently I've switched to Cloudflare because simply Google already knows enough about me. I don't want to give them anything else. However, for my own personal home network, I use OpenDNS because I have kids and OpenDNS allows me with a free account to filter my internet connection. I can filter out websites by category or by domain name specifically. That way I can block all adult material from my network, and I can even block like Kohl's.com that my wife requested me block a while back so she wouldn't spend any more money on it. Now, I'm not going to show you today how to set up OpenDNS. However, if you want me to make a video on that, let me know in the description down below. Now, let's jump back on the computer and I'll show you how to change your DNS servers. Now, like I said, there's multiple different DNS servers that you can find. I'm going to show you how to set up Cloudflare, but using Google would be exactly the same. And it's just entering in different DNS settings. So from your Ethernet status page right here, same one that we had open from before, you just go into your properties right here. And then from properties, you want to go into Internet Protocol version 4. And then click on properties here. And then at the bottom, it says use the following DNS server addresses. Just check that and enter in the IP address to the DNS server that you want to use. Now for me, I'm going to go 1.1.1.1. And then for the secondary, I'm going to go 1.0.0.1. And once you change your preferred and alternate, go ahead and hit OK. And that's all there is to it. Then the next thing I want to show you right here is to turn off your IP version 6 from your network card. And to do that, all you got to do is uncheck this right here. Now, why would you want to disable IP version 6? This is a very good question, and I have a couple of answers. First, it's IP version 6 was created because the limitation within IP version 4 with the number of IP addresses that are available. But since your home network is not on the internet, as long as you have less than 4 billion devices connected to your network, you really don't need IP version 6. Even if your router is using IP version 6 for your WAN connection, your local connection can still use IPv4 without any issues. In fact, as long as you have less than 255 devices, you don't even need to use a different subnet of IPv4. Now, the second reason I recommend disabling it is because, honestly, IPv6 addresses are impossible to remember. I mean, granted, you may have a better memory than me, but I can remember IPv4 addresses fairly easily. But when it comes to IPv6, there's no way I'm remembering that number. So, using IPv4 on your local network, and when you're doing any kind of troubleshooting or maintenance on your network, it'll be much easier. So those are the reasons why I disable IPv6 from the local network connection. Now, the next tip that I'm going to give you to help with the performance of your network connection is looking at the things that you have installed that are using your network connection. Now, this seems kind of obvious, but believe it or not, it's not obvious to everyone. But computers have, lots of programs installed on them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be very useful to us. However, lots of times these programs are accessing the internet. Like, if you're watching this channel, you probably have Steam installed. But how many other game stores do you have installed also? If you have anything made by Rockstar, then you have the Rockstar launcher. That's Rockstar's underhanded way of installing their game store on your computer, even though no one asked for it. And how many people are using the Epic Game Store? Have you checked lately to see how often these game stores are updating their games? Because if your network slows down, it might be because one of them is downloading an update. And speaking of updates, your computer might simply be downloading Windows updates. Windows pretty much does that without your control. However, with that said, I highly recommend against disabling Windows updates. It's just not worth it considering security issues that could result from not getting the latest updates for Windows. Do you need Steam, Epic, and every other game store running in the background, keeping your games updated when you're not playing games? I mean, some of those games might be games that you haven't even launched in a year that you just happen to still have installed on your computer. But with that said, you don't need to run all of these programs in the background all the time when you're not using them. By having them not start with Windows, it will stop them from using your network when you don't want them to. Now let's jump back on the computer and I'll show you a couple of other things that you can check as well. Now, we're going to go ahead and close this up right here. And then from this point, what we want to go into is we need to go into settings. So we can go ahead and close the control panel here and we can open up Windows 11 settings. Now, this might be a little bit different on Windows 10 devices because Windows 10 settings are a little bit different than Windows 11 settings. But from Windows 11, essentially what you need to do is you need to go into Windows Update. And then from there, you want to click on Advanced Options. And then from Advanced Options, you want to click on Delivery Optimization, which is right here. And then this right here will allow you to download updates from other computers or other devices on your network. So if you want, you can actually uncheck this completely and your system will not give or receive updates from other systems on the network. It'll just download them from Windows Download Server. However, what you could also do is you could go into Advanced Options right here and you can just throttle your updates. So instead of using the absolute as much bandwidth as possible, you could limit the amount of bandwidth that Windows uses to download updates. In fact, this will even limit updates downloading in the background. So if you don't want Windows Update to slow down your internet connection, you can turn this on and limit it to 1 megabit. I mean, it's going to take a long time to download some updates, but if you're not concerned with it, then it should work fine. And then also, if you go back to delivery optimization, you can go right here and look at Activity Monitor, and this will show you where all of your Windows Update data is coming from. So as you can see, right here, 5.8% is coming directly from Microsoft for me. And then from the Microsoft Cache server, I'm getting 94%. From PCs on my local network, I'm getting nothing. And from PCs on the internet, I'm also getting nothing. However, keep in mind, this is just a temporary install of Windows 11 that was installed before filming this video. So it's literally had no time to run like a normal system would run over time. And since we're here, the next thing that we were going to want to look at is we're going to go back over to Network and Internet right here. And then from Network and Internet, we want to go into Properties right here. And then from Properties, if you look about halfway down the page right here, you'll see where it says metered connection. Now, if this is turned on, it will actually limit what you can download from your internet connection. And this is really common with people that have internet connections that have limited bandwidth. However, I would highly recommend turning this off if you're sharing files between other computers on your network. Now, if you've gone through all of this stuff and your network is still dragging or not working like you want it to, then let me show you how you can reset your network back to completely defaults. Believe it or not, this can solve a lot of problems. Let's jump back on the computer and I'll show you how to do it. Now, if you click back to Network and Internet right here and you go into Advanced Network Settings, you can hit Reset the Network right here and you can just hit Reset now. However, if you want to know exactly what's going on, let me show you how to do it manually. So we're going to go ahead and close Settings right here and we're going to open up Command Prompts. We're going to type CMD and hit Run as Administrator, hit Yes to the User Account Control, and this should give us our command prompt. So from this point right here, there's a couple of commands that you need to run. The first one is netsh space winsock space reset and go ahead and hit enter. And it'll go ahead and reset your winsock catalog. Now the next one is we're going to reset our TCP stack. And for that, there's going to be several commands that we need to run. And these are going to be dependent on what you have enabled. So like for instance, you can type netsh int IPv4 reset, and then that's going to reset your IPv4 IP stack. However, you can also type in IPv6 reset, and that'll go through and it'll reset your IPv6 TCP stack. However, you can also just go IP by itself, just IP reset, and it'll go ahead and reset both. Now, if you'd like to, you can always go ahead and put a space and type reset log or any other kind of name you'd like to give it at the end of this, and then hit enter, and it'll go ahead and save a log file for that function that it did. Now, the next command we're gonna run is we're gonna go ahead and reset any proxy that might be on your system. Now, to do that, you go ahead and go netsh win http reset proxy. And then by doing that, it will either disable any proxy that you have installed. As you can see, I have no proxy server installed, so that's good. But if you do have a proxy server that happened to be installed by malware or some other function that you didn't know about, this will go ahead and reset that. Now, the next one I want to show you is actually flushing our DNS, and this one can help out a lot. Now, if you're only flushing the DNS, like obviously with this one right here, all these other commands that we ran, we're going to have to restart the computer in order for those actions to take effect. However, if you're just flushing your DNS, there's a couple of commands that you can run to avoid having to restart your computer. And those would be ipconfig space, and then you want to do / release. And then what this is going to do is it's actually going to eliminate your IP address. So you're not going to be connected to the network anymore. And then after that, you want to go ahead and type in ipconfig / flush DNS, and it's going to go ahead and flush your DNS. And then at this point, you type ipconfig again, space / renew. And then what this is going to do is it's going to renew your IP address and get you back online again. Now, if you're only flushing your DNS, then you can use release and renew in order for your system to come back online again. Otherwise, if you're doing all the other commands too, it isn't necessary to run release and renew because you're going to have to restart anyway. So ultimately, we covered a lot more about internet speed than I thought we were going to. But for the most part, these tips should not only help your internet speed, but they should also help your transfer speeds when you're sharing files across your network. Now, there are lots of more advanced tips that you could use to help increase performance, but they're more dependent on the size of files that you're transferring across your network. This right here should be more of the general things that you can do to speed up your network connection in all different situations. But if you have any other tips that you'd like to share, then let me know back in the comments below. You never know, I might end up doing a video on them. Ultimately, I think that the tip in this video that would help the largest number of people has to be changing your DNS settings. But if you'd like to have even more control over your DNS, then check out this video where I show you how to turn a Raspberry Pi into your own DNS server. It's a pretty old video, but I still use that DNS server today. As always, you guys have a great day.